Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. The people of Southwestern Illinois have had three long-serving members of Congress. Melvin Price served the Metro East area from the end of World War II until his death in 1988. Price, a Roosevelt Democrat, was the second most senior member of Congress at the time of his death. His successor, Jerry Costello, served from 1988 until 2013 when he retired. The third long-service congressman is John Shimkus. After Democrat Jerry Costello's retirement, Democrat William Enyart took his place. Now, after one 2-year term, Mr. Enyart was replaced by Republican Mike Bost. Mr. Bost took that seat on January 6, 2015. He represents the people of the 12th District. Mr. Bost serves on three key committees: Agriculture, Veterans Affairs, and Small Business. Democrats have said they are determined to reclaim the district during the 2016 presidential election cycle. Prior to his election to Congress, Representative Bost served for 2 decades in the Illinois House of Representatives, rising to the leadership position of House Republican Caucus Chair. Today it's my pleasure to introduce to this audience the Congressman from Murphysboro, Illinois, Congressman Mike Bost. Welcome to Conversation.
Thank you for having me on.
Well, we're glad to have you, actually. I don't know where to start because you have such a long history. First question is probably one you don't get very often is, how do you find the difference between sitting in the House of Representatives in Illinois and where you now sit in the United States?
That's a very common asked question.
Is it really?
Yeah, it really is. And I tell people it's like the old job on steroids, but it's actually more than that. It's quite a bit different.
Well, you went from the minority, the extreme minority.
Yeah. I only spent
to
2 years,
majority.
2 years in the majority in the Illinois House and 18 years in the minority. Being in the majority is a whole lot better. That being said, it is a different situation. One is the issues that you have to deal with. I would say that probably about a month in, when we were taken into Visitor Center 5. Visitor Center 5 is somewhere. It's an auditorium in and under the Visitor Center. It's a secure auditorium. Well, walking down there, I was asked to, I was told my staff couldn't go with me. 2, I was told that we had to turn our cell phones in, and then is when we went in and met with Secretary Kerry. That's when you realize the issues that you're dealing with. I refer to it as, "Hey, Dorothy, you're not in Kansas anymore" moments. And that was a real mind check of, okay, where you're at and what you're having to deal with. And we deal with all the other issues too. But when you start dealing with those things that affect people's lives to that level and affect the future of this nation and the future of the world, that's when you realize it's a very big job.
Yes, it is. And the point that you just made means I'm going to shift over directly into an area that I really wanted to cover with you, which is national defense. You're a former Marine.
I'm a Marine, yes.
Former Navy. And so we know something about the topic of national defense. But as a congressman now, your job is to make sure that the fighting forces are created
and are
fully
ready.
Funded,
Correct.
Properly trained.
Correct.
Okay. Do you feel at this moment that our forces are properly funded?
Let me tell you that we just recently passed a budget that provided more for them.
More or enough?
More for them, okay? My hope is that it's enough. My study and my advice, the advisors from every branch of the service feel they would always want to do more. The question is, can they keep our national security in check? We hope so. And we actually, with this budget, provided a 2-year budget that they can work with. The problem that we've had is we've been passing extensions on the budget, 2 months, 3 months. Our commanders could not, and our commander-in-chief, or not our commander-in-chief, but our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, could not plan together any long-range security mechanisms. Now they can. So I think that we've really moved forward with that. The question is what's enough? I'm fairly new at the job, been there 10 months. All I can do is listen to their advice. We hit the level that they had requested. And now we also, regardless of what that money is, we need to be very wise with that money. We don't want to stop waste and abuse, but we want to make sure that we invest in the best technology, that we are prepared to defend ourselves and be able to go anywhere we need to go at any given time.
When I was a naval officer, especially during the Reagan administration, there was talk about going to a 600-ship Navy. I was shocked during the period when they started talking about sequestering money to find out that we actually have now less than 300
That is
ships
correct.
in our Navy, somewhere closer to the 280 mark,
Right.
if I recall 283 or something like that. I might be mistaken about that number. But the president and his advisors say, oh, well, these ships are so much more advanced, they can do
They are
so
more
much
advanced,
more.
but not half.
But the point is, 600 ships can be in 600 places.
Correct.
280 ships can only be in 280
That is
places.
correct.
And there are times when you need to have ships to be able to go unexpected places
Right.
in a very, very quick succession. I've noticed that the Chinese government has been building up its blue water fleet, which is
Right.
a brand new concept for China.
Right.
They are also building up their Air Force
Right.
with planes which are the match, and perhaps in places maybe even better than those of the United States.
Right.
Comment on those things,
Well,
please.
when met early on with Ambassador John Bolton, and he explained right quick to a group of freshmen that one of our biggest fears right now is what is happening in China. China is building a navy, an unbelievable navy. With that, they're building outposts or islands. They aren't taking over islands. They're building islands out in
On top of coral.
on coral in neutral areas, which they should not be doing. Of course, our focus has been on Iraq and Iran and all the different places, and while they're doing this, concern that many of them have is not only China but Russia. But the fact that China, for the first time, the last time they built a navy, it was with wooden ships, and they're
Back
not,
in the 1400s.
They're not wooden anymore.
Right.
They are some of the best of the best. Now, I did ask specifically of the advisors that we meet with, do we feel what kind of a threat do we feel that is? Right now, they're watching it very closely. They are concerned, but it is not a large concern yet. It is with John Bolton. He believes it is. And I think that that's something we have to watch very, very closely. The question is, how much do we spend on our national defense, and where are we going to take it from? When we look at our budget, remember that only 1/3 of our budget, which includes the defense, is discretionary spending. We are committed with 2/3 for Social Security Disability, Medicaid, Medicare, public aid. These are some heavy burdens.
Yes, well, I'm glad you brought that up because
I figured you want to talk about that.
I came prepared for that. In the fiscal year 2015 budget, which ended September the 30th of 2015, so
Correct.
we're now FY16.
16.
So these are the last year's numbers. It says that our revenues were about $3.25 trillion. We spent about $3.7 trillion. Therefore, we ran up a deficit of $439 billion. That turns out to be 2.5% of our GDP,
Right.
that amount there. Our receipts come from income tax, $1.54 trillion. Payroll taxes, that's just regular folks like the guys that work right in here.
Right.
Payroll taxes, $1.06 trillion come out of just regular workers' pays into the budget. Corporations put in $344 billion, and we also had another $298 billion for a grand total of $3.2 $3 trillion what we took in. Now, of that, here's where we're winding up. $857 billion goes to Social Security, $519 billion to Medicare. That just by themselves. Okay, so we have a budget, right, of $3.6 trillion, and of that, $2.3 goes to those two line items alone.
Right.
All right. Then we got $542 billion for income security, whatever the heck that is, and $450 billion to health care for another almost $1 trillion. So those two right there, those two areas,
this is
are
why
$2.4 trillion out of a $3.6 trillion, which doesn't leave you much.
But this is why the politicians will always tell you wanting to talk about those issues are the third rail. But they have to be talked about.
So what have you done? I know you've only been there 10 months.
Let me tell you what we have done.
What have you done?
Okay, let me tell you what we have done. Where many people were angry over the fact that when we raised the debt ceiling, we, on the Republican side of the aisle, we would prefer not to raise the debt ceiling, but you have to do it because that way you don't go belly up on what you can't do it, okay? You've got to actually raise it. But the president was wanting that as a clean debt ceiling. And we said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to have some modifications, sensible modifications in Social Security disability, the process on which you receive it, those who are eligible for it. There were some modifications on Social Security payouts, not to take away from people who are receiving, but some long-term goals to correct. Let me say that again. Not for the people who are receiving, but those that are up and coming, because we've got to make some sensible changes. There was some welfare reform that was part of the package. I don't have my dot points in front of me, but I'm telling you that was all in there. So the idea and intent, and I think the best way to describe it is, our goal is get to that point of a balanced budget, which if we follow the lines of what was presented in the 2011 Budget Act, we can still focus on the goal. Unfortunately, we're fighting a president that's pushing back, and it's like, as a Navy man, you'd know with a sailing ship, when you, instead of heading straight into the wind, you'll just go straight backwards. You have to tack back and forth. Well, that's what we were trying to do with those maneuvers, and that's what we've got to do until we get the wind at our backs and actually get a commander-in-chief who wants to actually push in that direction, like we want to push in that direction. So my job is to keep going and trying to gain ground where we can gain ground. Let me also tell you that it's how we're going to have to sell it. The reality is that there are young people that are younger, actually myself and younger, that believe that Social Security, we're afraid it's going to fail before we ever get there. And if we keep heading down this path, it may. And let me tell you that Social Security and Medicare, they are obligations. They're not entitlement, they're an obligation. People have been paying into them. So we've got to make sure that they're secure. But we got to make them secure in a couple ways. One, we've got to be sensible on how it pays out.
Pause there for a second.
Okay.
You are aware that since 1965, I believe it is, that the federal government has been robbing the Social Security fund. In other words, what did I have that number at? The amount of...
Well, actually what they've done is they put
the $1 trillion a year that's going in payroll taxes, most of which is going towards Social Security, is in fact being used for other things, and IOUs are being placed in a box.
Well, it's being used for certain people under the claim that they're due it when they didn't pay into it. Now that's a reality. That's what you've got. You've got a lot of programs that Social Security pays for people who have never paid into Social Security. That doesn't work. That was never in the original plan. And also, and I'm going to use some numbers, I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, and I don't want to misquote here, and all of a sudden, as politicians do, get yourself in trouble because okay? If I remember the numbers right, when Social Security was created, there were 15 people paying in for every one person drawing. And I believe that's down to 6 people paying in for every one person drawing now.
I think it's 3 or 2.
That 3 or 2, I think, is with Social Security disability, or not Social Security disability, with Medicare. That's Medicare thing, but I may be wrong on that. But you can see what's happening.
Well,
and everyone can see what's happening.
My point in reading all these numbers to you is this. We're putting most of our money into individual pockets
Right.
from taxes that are collected for the general welfare.
Right.
But the general welfare is not being met. I mean, and by that I mean the Constitution is basically, when it was written, was a mutual defense pact to defend the various states, and it was a free trade zone within the country.
Right.
Okay. The idea was to collect taxes in order to meet the
Those
needs
goals.
of all the people in all the states,
Right.
or to meet the needs of the states. But we have shifted over and have become what appears to me to be
A socialist
much more
society.
charity.
Right.
We're
Right.
like a huge charity.
Right.
We're like the Salvation Army. We are collecting all these money from people, and instead of using it to build the latest aircraft necessary to deal with the Chinese
Right.
over there in the China Sea, or new new divisions necessary to
Right.
go into Europe now to keep the Russians calm.
Right.
We're spending a lot of money making sure that people are able to put food on their table, to pay for their rent, to pay
it's
for a
more than
cell
that.
phone,
It's
and
more
et
than that.
cetera.
Let's look at what you, and see if you agree with me on this, Lee. What the Constitution really says the federal government's job is. The federal government's job is to protect our borders,
Yes.
provide for a national defense, to deal with foreign trade and interstate commerce. That is your between your states.
Yes.
Make treaties with foreign countries. Other than that, there's not anything you're supposed to do. Or do you know of anything else in there?
There are some, but
for the most part,
in
that-
essence,
you're right.
yes, you're there.
Now, let me tell you, I'm not a legislator screaming, get rid of the Department of Education, okay? But education should be handled at our state level. It shouldn't be handled from the federal government. We've proved over and over, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, when they move forward with a plan where there's no child left behind or the other
Common
one,
Core.
Common Core, the federal government doesn't do real good because what they want to do is one size fits all. And what happens to the kids in Cairo, their school district might be quite a bit different than what's going on in New York, and vice versa. So that's why it should be state controlled. We also shouldn't be in healthcare. We shouldn't. Private health care worked better. What the third part of the rollout of Obamacare is now going to happen, and everybody's rates are going to go up. Because not that their goals weren't right in the first by wanting health care to be affordable, portable, and deal with pre-existing conditions, but it should have been dealt with at the state and local levels, and should have been dealt with the private sector. And so there's two examples of where we, the federal government, are going awry. Our programs, as far as our social programs are concerned, have grown and grown and grown, whether it's in the state of Illinois or whether it is because people become dependent on it. I have no problem with a program that gives a hand up, but we have created programs that are entrapments, programs where generations of families are trapped on them. And we've got to do what we can to modify and change those where they don't become a place where somebody just stays, but it's some place where somebody strives to leave and to become self-sufficient.
Well,
and that's an American idea.
This country used to be very entrepreneurial.
Yes.
I mean, people would come from other places to the United States and they'd become farmers, they'd become shop owners.
That's right.
They'd become, eventually they might actually manufacture something, in a small mill or something like that. And the people who worked for them were the new ones that just came in.
Right.
But eventually, when they saved enough money, they went out and bought their own farm. They went out and built their own store.
They pursued the American dream.
They became business, just like the Vietnamese boat people who came here in the late mid-1970s, came here, couldn't speak English.
And if you check, most of them own their own businesses and doing very well.
Exactly.
Because they have that inner drive that we need to make sure the American citizens get back into their hearts.
Right. So we have a huge group of people in the United States who no longer believe either they want to pursue this or that it's possible to pursue it. Now, I'm going to cross over here and say there appears in the United States to be a huge, huge level of dissatisfaction and unhappiness.
Right.
And that this is leading to considerable angst among just regular people, people that I know, people
Sure.
you know. I mean,
They're
people
frustrated.
who are normally, pretty satisfied with
Right.
life, saw a path toward, from here to old age for themselves, for their kids and their grandkids. They don't see that anymore.
Right.
What is it that you are striving to do as a congressman?
Here's what I believe we as congressmen and women are going to be doing under our new leadership. I believe that with the new speaker, Paul Ryan, he will actually set down goals, short-term goals and long-term goals, on what we want to target as what we want America to come back to look like. People aren't happy with where we're at right now, nor should they be. Over entitlements, excessive government that comes in when you try to work to build a business. It discourages you from over-regulation and oversight to the point that you can't compete. You can't compete with somebody down the street, let alone compete with the people in another nation. And we've got to get off of that. One of the things that I've been assigned to do is to work with, in my small business committee, is to work with businesses throughout my district and throughout the nation to find out where it is that government oversight is duplicative in nature, so that we can make sure that only one oversight group and reduce this particular branch over here and keep them away from doing that. And find out some of those regulations are so burdensome that it basically pushes people out of work. So what we're trying to do is calm that down, to encourage people to make that investment in their lives, to go out to build small businesses, large businesses alike, and make sure that they have that opportunity, not to give them because I am not a big believer that the government can do anything to create business. Mm-hmm. Government can get out of the way and allow the entrepreneurship of the American people to work. And that's the main goal that we're trying to do from that aspect.
This morning, on my way here, I met a tourist from Connecticut. And to make a long story short, it turns out that he had a grandfather or somebody like that who years ago worked at Alton Boxboard Company, mm-hmm. right? And I pointed out to him, I said, well, all the way from the south down there to the north up there used to be tens of thousands of factory jobs that people worked in. I said that there's barely anything left now. There has to be some mechanism for people who are not highly, highly trained to be able to earn a decent living in this world. Now, we have taken, or not we, the jobs that used to be here for people like that, high school graduates, mm-hmm. have been moved to other places. Right. And the federal government has allowed that to happen. The federal government has to figure out a way, and here I am instructing you, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But the federal government has got to find a way to bring those jobs back. Met another gentleman who is a manufacturer. Right. His manufacturing is done, I think he said, in Vietnam, Malaysia, and China. Right. I said, well, you could bring that back because the wage differential isn't so big anymore as it used to be. He said, yeah, it's not the wage differential. I'm not worried about that.
Business.
It's the regulations, like you were saying. I cannot work in America and build whatever it was he was building in America because of that. Now, we got about 5 minutes left here.
We have to make sure, my mother's side, all coal miners, there was a time and a place, our unions helped us make sure our job locations are safe, and that's good. But other regulations, I don't want to step away from safety, but there are overburdensome regulation. You can talk to any business person, and they know that there's overburdensome regulations, either by the state or the federal government, that given just a break on that, they'd put more people to work, they could produce a product for a better price, and could compete in that worldwide market and bring those jobs back. And as we work forward towards trade, we also have to make sure that our customs laws are in place, that when someone tries to load up on certain products like they do on the steel, that we're able to react quickly with tariffs to have a sensible exchange of products.
And I don't think that people fully understand, they hear about this cyber warfare stuff. Mm-hmm. They don't understand that the planes that China is building, which are the equal of American planes, is because they are American planes.
They are American.
They have gone into Boeing. They've gone in to the other companies, and they've actually stolen from their computers
right.
their billions of dollars worth of plans.
Right.
But the Chinese have the money to build these things. We're spending all of our money on social welfare
programs.
and that doesn't leave us enough to actually build that.
I agree.
Last 3 minutes, I'm going to give to you.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you for having me on. It has been quite a learning experience in my first 10 months. Each day I learn. I think we've got a good quality staff in place, some very good ones that are in D.C. and back here in the district, whether it's what we're doing on our constituent work here or whether it's working on the legislation that we're working on every day in D.C. I'm proud of what they're doing, but I want to say to everyone that's listening to this program how thankful I am that I'm in a nation that I can serve in this capacity. Me, a truck driver's son from deep southern Illinois that just happened to be lucky enough to be blessed by the people to go and serve them. It is a challenging job. It is one of the most difficult times right now in our nation's history, but we appreciate the input from everyone, and we're trying to do the best job we can, and I just enjoy serving them.
Yeah, and you're, how in the world did you ever get into a Democrat seat like this one that I described in the opening?
Let me describe my Democrat friends in the district. For the most part, they're pro-life, they're pro-Second Amendment, they are anti-big government, don't want big taxes, and don't want to be pinned down by overburdensome government.
Yes.
But when you ask them if they're a Democrat or Republican, they'll say they're Democrat, and they'll say, well, why? And they go, well, Mom and Dad were, or my union told me I need to be. But the reality is we're all still right here in southern Illinois, southern and western Illinois, trying desperately to make ends meet every day, provide for our family, and try to provide a better future for our kids. And if you go one-on-one with people and just explain that's what you want to try to secure and make sure this country continues to work, then you can earn their support.
And that's what you did? That's how you got?
You go out
because I said it in the beginning that I've been told that the Democrats...
Well, they want it back. They want it back. Oh, yeah, they got a big target. Yeah,
not just on your back, but on your front.
I'm number 2 target in the nation.
You are?
Yeah. Number 1 is in Illinois as well, and that's Bobby Dole up around the Chicago area. But then I'm number 2 in the nation. They've already said that.
And Rodney Davis, I'm sure he's on that list.
Rodney Davis is on the list, but I think he's moved down just a little bit. They hit him hard enough. And the unique thing about the district also is you mentioned Mel Price. In 71 years, it has been in the Democrat hands in the North. In the southern part of this district, the last person to have it was John A. Logan. General John A. Logan, after the Civil War, when he came back as a Republican instead of a Democrat, which he was before. That's how long that one's been.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you,
like I said, this is our first time to meet. I hope that you will come back and be with us again. This program, by the way, we upload all of our segments now to YouTube, so you can.
Great.
We'll make sure we send you the link so you can put it on your website. Thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, Lee, for having me.
All right. And I've been speaking with Congressman Mike Bost. He is a Republican from the state of Illinois. He represents the people of the 12th District. He has been in office really only just since this January, for about 10 months now. He will be running for re-election, so I hear. And so if you liked what you heard here today, or you missed part of it and would like to see it again or show it to your friends, go to YouTube. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.